it saddens me because I don't want them to say I want to be an illustrator, I want to be an artist, I want to be a musician, I want to be an insurance salesman. I just don't get students raising their hands saying that they want to be something in middle school. So I try to pull questions or ask questions and get some ideas, and then I will say, well, what do your folks do? And I'll get the answer, well, oh, did I turn this on, Diane? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I don't know.
Well, maybe, I don't know if that makes a difference.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'll get an answer like, my dad leaves really early, he wears a suit, he drives to San Diego, and then there isn't a whole lot of depth into knowing even what their parents do. So I've tried through the years, and now I'm happy that the district, the school district in Murrieta has brought me on board to teach in the alternative education system in Murrieta. I'm going to be teaching summer school, digital illustration classes, and hope to be teaching actually full-time in the fall on one of the campuses. But the reason I asked the question is when I was in middle school, when I was in grammar school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I think if we listen to James, if any of you were here for James last night, or Greg or James a couple hours ago, and Greg last night, James's passion, when we talk about drawing, it's something that starts really early and kind of gets your guts and your heart. Yeah, we were hoping you had left the building. Left the building. The most important, you said a lot of good things, but drawing all the time. Drawing all the time. Would you do me a favor, James? Go ask Maddie, who's at my computer. She's got her sketchbook in her backpack.
Okay.
Could you just see if she does? Oh, Maddie, I didn't see you. Do you have your sketchbook?
Yeah.
Could you just, I'm not going to go through page by page, but I just want to show what a sketchbook is.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
I know I didn't ask you in advance. I'm not going to put it up on the screen.
Okay.
I figured you'd be back there drawing. She's one of my students, and this is a breathtaking experience to look at the commitment of Maddie's just finishing her junior year in high school, and well, it's a good way as far as I could tell. And this is the old one was filled cover to cover, both pages, both sides of the paper, and I loved it because the cover was all beat up and it was like a museum piece. It was like, this is a sketchbook. And it is the major tool of, I know in high school, I had to start drawing in the sketchbook because I was drawing on my math papers and then having to turn something in, and then the math teacher would see that I did a cartoon of him. And he had really hairy arms, and I drew these really hairy arms on this guy, and that was Disney. And those were the days when you could go on the Disney lot instead of the Disney Tower. There was an issue at Disney where there were union employees on the lot, which is where Walt's office was, and Mickey Mouse Lane, and Goofy Drive, and the sound stages, and it's funny, there was a strike, and I had to deliver a piece of artwork. I was non-union, they wouldn't let me on the lot. It was like, oh my gosh. Well, eventually, they built the tower, and all that stuff disappeared. But so I went into Carson Van Austen's office, and he looked at my portfolio, and let's see if I can grab this one. This was my first painting of my career. I could fix the brightness on this, it looks awfully dark. Okay, let's just give it a second here. One thing I should have checked. Any Mac people here, if I'm doing something wrong, you need to see it. Can you tell me? Oh, what was that? Projector. I couldn't believe that they would give me an assignment an assignment with the complexity. They gave me model sheets of mini engagers. Actually, they gave me a whole loose leaf binders of characters. And I've always been able to draw. The concept was presented to me, and I did the sketch. It was approved, and I took it home and I painted it. Whoa, that's dark. Minnie looks like she's got a heck of a suntan. And it flew. No changes except for, and they didn't catch it soon enough. I thought I could sign my name. And I found out that illustrators don't get to sign your name in the artwork. So it was already printed and they caught it and they said, don't ever do that again. And I said, I promise I won't. What I learned about that was, that's what I realized what an illustrator is. And I'm different than James being an animator. An illustrator, it's a one-shot image, it's a painting. This was for a poster series through the Disney stores, if I remember correctly. It's a work-for-hire situation. There are no percentages involved. You go in. And at that time, in the world of making a living, this was a very nice way to make a living and begin raising a family. But going back to an illustrator doesn't get to sign his name on the piece of artwork. The fine artist does, wherever they want to. But what I found out was I got a guaranteed signature on a check that came 30 days after I invoiced the project. And they were really fun when they had mouse ears on them. And the more of those that came in, the happier I was. The adventures, let's get back here. Okay, let's get out of here. In the Burbank area, I started to be known for a person who loved doing a lot of detail, this was painting number 2. This followed probably 2 weeks after I delivered the soda shop piece. This one came in. I tried to sneak my name instead of Wurlitzer. I tried to put Wray right under Mickey's nose there. That didn't work either.
Even after you promised you would never do that again?
Yeah, it's just, there's this thing, when James was talking about it, we're not exactly normal human beings in a lot of ways. I mean, there's always some kind of gag that you want to try to get away with, or something you want to do. And at Disney, one of my buddies who was on staff had this enormous drawing that he was working on. It was very involved, and it had several characters in the background. And I went in with another freelance illustrator, a friend of mine, and we took a piece of tissue paper, tracing paper, over his artwork. And we taped it up, and we grabbed red pencils, and we just started making changes. It was all a joke. We were, move this over here. No, we don't want this. Take this out. Replace it with this. The whole tracing paper, the front of it, was all marked up with changes. He came back from lunch. He took one look at the illustration and the changes, and we never saw this coming. He took the illustration board and he went and ruined it. Just crunched it because of our joke. It wasn't good. We kept working. We all laughed about it quite a bit, but those were in the days before maybe it was photographed or it was too big to be Xeroxed or something. But all through time, there have been things that illustrators have done. He got back at me because I brought in a drawing, and he happened to have a can of white spray paint. And when my drawing was sitting on the art director's desk and no one was looking, he just took white spray paint and he just painted it all white. And so we were even, and we've been friends for life. But just some of the crazy adventures. The fun for me in talking to you today is, I'm not even embarrassed to say this anymore. This has been 40 years of painting images for Walt Disney and for Warner Brothers. Briefly had an agent. Agents and I didn't get along too well. Yeah, they tried to get you more money, but they still took 33% of the cost of the job. And I had one agent that thought for some reason it all happened magically, and she gave me my portfolio back when I invited her to come and sit in my studio and stand on a stepladder behind me and watch me work all day to see how complex the process was and how time-consuming it was. And she didn't like that idea, and she said, I think I can find another illustrator, and I said, I think I can find another agent. So that kind of came to an end. Going back to the question of the journey, I've never stopped having the passion to draw. And yet, I've never stopped having the passion to be I wanted to be involved in the industry. I grew up in Chicago. I could have stayed in Chicago and maybe tried to make a living as Chicago is famous for product illustration. St. Louis is famous for Budweiser beer and painting beer cans. I think I had like Budman and different projects, but I just had this thing, had to come to California. I worked for this, well, I'm just trying to get these thoughts gathered up, so just give me a few minutes because I know I'm kind of jumping around. It all goes back to the beginning and the passion. I don't know, there's a gentleman I spoke to last night. You're here, yes. We talked about passion, and we talked about commitment, and talking about the future, and it was just exhilarating to have an in-depth conversation about passion, about honesty with new people you meet, about dreams, and becoming friends, and supporting each other with dreams. And I feel, I'm looking at Don, and I think that he and I had a connection, 15 years ago maybe. And we both the same kind of commitment. There's something about being a bit of a renegade, choosing a career path, being an animator, me being an illustrator, Greg last night being a producer, director, actor. It all takes that commitment. I'm starting to see it here. I'm noticing people sitting at my equipment and sitting down and drawing and trying things. And I think that's also wonderful, but that also triggers something in my mind that blows me away. If we all look at this timeline of art, if I had Michelangelo here, and Picasso here, and Norman Rockwell here, and we went through the history of art, every one of those people would have sat down with a sketch, worked on the sketch would have been sent to an art director, driven to an art director, would have been analyzed, redrawn. Well, Michelangelo, obviously not Da Vinci. The Pope could have done that, I'm not sure. But we're in this moment in time where, when I started my career, I used to go to this art store in Hollywood, and I'd buy pencils, and I'd buy paintbrushes, and I'd buy the best watercolor paper I could afford, or the best illustration board I could afford, the best quality paint I could afford. I went up there about 5 years ago, and it turned out that the art store is closed. There's no need for an art store to sell art supplies. It's down to Aaron Brothers here in town, Dick Blick in San Diego. It's just not what it used to be. It's not what I grew up with. What I want to do right now with my career is talk to students, talk to people that sign up at my classes, and try to take them on the journey of of the importance of not losing what will be lost in a couple of generations, the understanding that art wasn't always done on a computer, but what the computer has allowed us to do is taking it to a level that has never been experienced before. And it's wonderful for me to be in the tail end of this football game of life. I'm in the fourth quarter. I'm in, at 65, I'm going to do whatever I can for the next 25, 30 years and be happy as an artist, be happy with my career. But I'm looking at people in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in your 20s and your 30s. Where are you going to be in your 40s? Where do you want to be in the industry? And the fact that people here today are involved in this weekend of DigiFest means that you've got an interest in one part of what's happening here now. And that's where the focus, that's where the passion, that's where online, do people go to Barnes & Noble and buy books anymore? I don't know, to go read about how to paint in Photoshop or how to work in Maya. But the focus has to come from in here. Now, kind of fun to see that, where all my stuff has ended up, from Kleenex boxes to Christmas plates to video game covers. That was actually used as a box for a pasta company that was using Lady and the Tramp to sell pasta. That's just one of the cutest tweeties I ever did. Video game cover, wine LPs. Just brought sadness to my eyes. I just lost the art director that worked on that piece. I was going to repaint this one today. This one I did several years ago, and I thought it would be fun to step back and repaint it. That one pretty much shows how old I am. That was my first video game cover, and not getting inside the games and developing characters for the games, I was enjoying a wonderful livelihood. I thought I had a bunch of those video game covers in a row here. Let's go back a step. I go through the cycle. Let me just show you some of this stuff. See what you respond to. Somebody you talked about Aladdin, or somebody did. Gosh, there was the Mario generation or time. California Raisins. The Burger King Kids. Mega Man, he didn't do too well. Zero box covers are great. Budgets are fantastic. But I guess in going through these things, you can see where an Illustrator, the difference of what I do, and I shouldn't say difference, because each one of us has a special place in the industry, a special need in the industry. Each one of these princesses, I did style guides for that are part of the Disney collection, so that any licensee that has a product that wants to feature Snow White, they order the style guide, and in the style guide through their contract, they get every princess pose of Cinderella that they need, or any of the artwork that they want to put together. I love negotiating prices for these things. I know I'll have people ask me, okay, so Mickey Mouse on the cover of a Kellogg's cereal box. The students ask me that, and they'll say, you know, what was that? Well, it was like 4 mortgage payments in a month, and if you figure your mortgage payment is $2,500, it was like 4 mortgage payments. And you sit and paint and can't realize that people are actually paying me to do this. And I say it beats working for a living. We're talking about something earlier too. Mickey's nose, I hardly ever paint it anymore. I harvest it from a previous painting. I'll go back and take chunks and pieces when you were talking about hands moving. It's like, why are we painting Mickey's nose? I painted it 100 times. I can go back in an illustration in Photoshop and just pull that up. All right, enough of looking at stuff. Here's the, I guess here's the story. The deal is, we talked about a story last night. I think my journey in talking to you guys is about commitment, and it's about passion, and it's about laying awake and not staring at the ceiling, worrying about if tomorrow's going to work out and if you're going to find your next project. You go to bed as positive as you can, and you try to figure out, how am I going to accomplish what I can't figure out how to accomplish right now, and give yourself a break and say, okay, I'm tired right now, it's a long day, it's 3, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in a bad frame of mind, so don't get down on yourself. Get a good night's sleep, wake up the next morning and say, okay, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with this new project? How am I going to deal with this new art director? Angus and I were saying yesterday, 2 important words in relationships. And through the years that I've done this, and maybe it might be the best thing that I've passed on to other illustrators and people. You used to get phone calls, now you get emails, but you get a phone call and say, hi Greg, this is Alice Evans at Disney, and I'd like to use you on this project. And I'm already thinking, okay, you just said the word use, I'm getting ready for this. Versus when Skip Morgan calls from Disney and he says, Greg, I really want to work with you on this project. The 2 words, I want to work with you and I want to use you, turn out to be 2 of the most important words in my entire career. I think if my wife and I, if you said your wedding vows and you said, I want to work with you for the rest of my life, or however, what are the words of a wedding vow? You know, we're going to be husband and wife and we're going to work together. What if you said, we're going to use each other together? I mean, take advantage of each other, not respect each other. And in my career, I've actually gotten to the point now when someone uses that word use, I tell them that I'm not interested in working with them, because they have just let me know something about themselves they probably didn't even realize. But I have to say, through all the times and the percentages, that I'm correct. That if they say, I want to use you, I just can't, in my mind anymore. It's something to pass on to people. If that applies to you, if it's something that makes sense, save it. It's important. The earlier time talking about validation and stories and how things happen in life and how you go from middle school to high school to college and you have this dream. On career days, I'll ask people, do you have a hero? If you can't tell me what you want to do when you finish school, do you have a hero? Is there a hero? And if they say Michael Jordan back then, or if they say, you know, pick a ball player, a football player, Tom Brady, if they say it's, you know, Barack Obama, if they say whoever it is, I'm excited to think you've got a hero. That means you respect someone. And if you've got a hero, you're following what they're doing. You're following how they got there. You may know where they went to school. You may know their strengths, their weaknesses. You may know how they built and made their weaknesses stronger, and how they packaged themselves, and how they became successful. And for me, at a real young age, I had discovered a hero in LA named Charlie White. He was really after Alberto Vargas, who was a very famous illustrator, artist, who was my #1 hero, who I did meet briefly before he passed away, but he was quite elderly. Charlie White was the ultimate hero in my life in the field of illustration. It was if you were an actor and you had Mel Gibson I don't know, pick a name and you say, I really respect him and I wish I could work with him. I wish he could teach me something. Well, I sent Charlie my samples and he said, would you come and work for us? We would like to have you. And he didn't say, would you come and we would like to use you. He did say, would you come and work with us? I did. I did that actually right out of Art Center. I kind of snuck in and forgot a chapter there. I worked with Charlie and I learned things not about how to squeeze paint out of a tube and how to draw a picture, but I learned the business. I learned how a project comes in from an art director. I learned how you have to speak to the art director and how you have to do this balance of what is the deadline, what is the budget, what is more important. If it's a tighter deadline, the budget's going to go up. If you want to pay me less, then you have to give me more time. But in having a hero, I not only respected his ability to paint, which to me he still is. He is still my hero. He's still alive. We still chat on the phone on occasion. But in his studio, he taught me the business of being an animator. So I decided to jump in and start making changes. And so I'm not the greatest at social media, but I'm doing well enough, and I'm doing well enough through different websites that represent illustrators that my current project I'm working on is camel racing in Dubai. Now, when the art director called, actually emailed, because calling from Dubai isn't exactly, I guess, something you do every day. Actually, not the art director, the author. So we got this book about camel racing, and it's a big deal in Dubai, and I said, wow, it sounds really exciting. And so she gave me some websites to look up on YouTube and see what camel racing was about. And she said it's going to feature the Crown Prince of Dubai, whose name is Fazaz, and his friend, his name is Maisha, and they're buddies. And they buy this camel who's this kind of scrawny, underfed, lazy camel that's tired and doesn't want to do anything, and they feed it, they train it, they get it healthy. And so anyway, it's a wonderful children's book, which I didn't understand camel racing, but after watching the videos and realizing that they don't run around in a circular track, that they run down a straight line, and the Crown Prince is actually in his Range Rover, and he is through the sunroof, and he's got a microphone, and he's screaming at his camel. And there's not a jockey, there's a radio-controlled little jockey that whips the camel, and he does all that with this. And I'm thinking, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so the neat thing is, your work is slow. When the phone call comes in and it says Dubai, and I think, oh my Lord, and the Crown Prince, I bet there's money involved here. And there was. And so you kind of, I worked my way through, and it's just trying to keep positive. The conversation we had was pretty intimate. There were details about how the darkness affects people. What a rebound. It was such a neat experience to find out that the world doesn't have to say, okay, everything is leaving and it's going somewhere else. Now things are coming in from Australia and from Canada, and I'm busy and I'm having fun doing children's books. I'm not doing the work for Warner Brothers and Disney anymore because it has in fact gone away. It's now being done overseas. That's the current moment in time for me. I'm thinking maybe it's a time for asking questions, because I've got a feeling maybe I'm supposed to be talking more about digital art and Photoshop and how do you paint a picture in Photoshop, and I think what I'd like to do is actually have people look over my shoulder when I'm actually painting in Photoshop. I was going to set all that stuff up here on the stage and have you, I realize you can't look over my shoulder, you can see it happening on the screen, but you're not going to see the tools, the techniques, the decisions, and so here I am just trying to talk about a career path. There's a question, that's a good thing.
I have tons of questions, but one of them, it's interesting to me. I do a little.
We didn't have books. There was nothing online. There was, I'd go to Barnes and Noble and read about Photoshop, but it was how to remove a telephone pole in the sky, or it was how to edit a photograph, but not how to paint something. So my wife probably can tell this story better than I can. I had a notebook on my nightstand. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I would realize how to take the old craft, the old technique, and convert it into a digital way to do what I did traditionally. So traditionally, in airbrushing, the process was to buy a stack of acetate that you went through like tracing paper. And there was a small little swivel knife that you would cut out these windows, say of Donald's beak. You would just cut out and expose that shape of his beak. And then you would load up your airbrush with the right color, yellow, and which is I forget the number for Disney. It's like the Pantone matching system was like maybe 437. You could match that color perfectly, squeezing paint out of the tube. Well, I would airbrush through that acetate, and I was trying to think, okay, Photoshop, how do you do that? And I realized, oh, the pen tool makes a path, and the path creates a selection, and the selection is the same as the window that I just cut in the acetate. And the airbrush, I can fill and I can paint that. And oh my gosh, I don't have to match the paint to make it match 349. I can go through the color picker and hit PMS 349 and have the exact color that Disney needs. And then to try to transfer, how do I do the highlights? It was just a constant, wonderful, like, oh my gosh, I can do that. I can do a shadow. I can make this happen. Yeah,
Sorry.
I have a question. How does somebody, there's a lot of young people in the room here, how would they become a Disney animator?
I think it's just, again, what James was saying. For me, it would be Illustrator. The journey really does begin, I think, with mentors in high school to develop the portfolio, to develop a body of work that is respected by the next level of your life, of where are you going to go? Do you want to go to Cal Arts? Do you want to go to Otis Parsons? Do you want to go to Art Center? Do you want to be in the state of California? Do you want to go to Syracuse? Do you want to, there are art schools all over the country offering different programs. But the portfolio commitment from high school to college, I believe, was more important than any of the grades I got in math or science. I mean, that wasn't what the art department was looking at. I went to the University of Illinois. They looked at my portfolio, and I was accepted. The letter came, and you're now accepted into the art department. So the first thing was to get onto a university campus. The next thing for me was to get away from my parents. To get away from my parents that were influencing decisions that I wanted to make. Where I had the freedom, I actually ended up in college really young. I was 16 when I was a freshman. I got to make decisions without discussion at the dinner table. Luckily I had their financial support. Oh, but.
I just have another question.
Yeah.
And I guess what I was wondering is,
Yeah.
whenever I see this,
Yeah.
and everybody's probably seen some of this work that you have here, what makes, I know from being an artist, I'm a regular visual artist, but I know from being a visual artist, the detail here and the pattern and the routine that you have to go through, everything's outlined with just an ever so slight white when it's on a dark background, there's certain, what makes a certified, you consider yourself a certified Disney artist, right?
The title they gave me is sanctioned. That was nothing that was, wasn't given to me the first or second or third year of working for them. it was something that over time, it became apparent to art directors at either company, because I'm actually sanctioned both at Warner Brothers and Disney, that consistency that you're talking about was going back to that batting average of hitting 1,000. The consistency, the steps I used when I was working with acetate and airbrushing, I would actually cut these parallel lines and I would airbrush the holding lines around a shape, around Mickey's, say his shorts are red, there would be holding lines that are part of the animation or the illustration process of how Mickey had to look. And actually, it was fun because in those early days, we were all discovering that was going to be the way Mickey was going to look.
What is the early days? What year was that?
My first year of illustrating on my own was 1975.
How many people in the room were born by then?
And actually, 1975 was, I wasn't a sanctioned Disney illustrator, that's for sure. I lived in Chicago and I had a portfolio from the University of Illinois. And I just hit the streets of Michigan Avenue, up and down the streets, and I showed my portfolio, which was not licensed characters. It was a lot of drawing, a lot of painting, and I went into every magazine up and down Michigan Avenue, and probably the best known magazine in Chicago is Playboy magazine, and I remember hitting the button in the Hancock building and going up to the 37th floor, and you get out in the lobby, and I leave my portfolio off for a review, and I had conned my way into a job as an art director right out of college. I found an ad in the paper, and it was looking for an art director, and I called, I made an appointment, and they said, sure, we'd love to see you. So I went in, and they looked at my illustrations, they say, this is great, but we're looking for an art director. I said, oh, I brought the wrong portfolio. I didn't have a design portfolio, but I didn't sleep that night. I went straight to the art store. I bought everything I needed to recreate a design portfolio. I put it together that night. I went in the next morning, and I was hired as an art director. So, I mean, there's part of being an artist, and there's part of you that's a con artist. It's like Vince and I knew basically what I did is I bought the proper size piece of white paper that would fit into the sleeve of a portfolio presentation. And I literally started cutting out, they sold, it was called Greek body copy. It was letters that didn't make any sense at all. It just occupied space. You could trim it to the width of a column. You could lay it out on a page. You could cut out a photograph and paste it down here. You could take Letraset, which was a rub down letter, not like anything available in digital art today. You had to rub this wax lettering down, and so I did about 15, 20 of those pages. I just made them up. I made up a couple of car ads. I did a spread for an editorial article.
So I guess the difference is that one was the art portfolio showing how good of an artist you were.
Yeah.
And the director one, being an art director, showed how you would create an editorial page.
Correct, yeah.
So I think that was the difference.
Yeah, and so I got lucky because if they wanted the illustration portfolio, I couldn't have done that overnight. But I could do the art director.
It was more of a layout type.
Yeah, exactly. Although
and we have another question here from...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I stepped out for a few minutes looking back and I saw that there's Photoshop behind you. Are you going to be able to show us some of your techniques?
I wanted to do all that in the, I don't know. I was going to put all that up on stage here, and I didn't quite know how I could make it happen. I could pop open a couple files.